This is rural Middle Tennessee. We don't see things like that here. We don't experience that level of brutality or violence or just coldness.
Megan Sharpton, a goal-oriented nursing student, vanished into the silence of a Tennessee night, leaving behind a community paralyzed by the discovery of her remains in a secluded, burning clearing. Her family was told she was attending a last-minute job interview, a promising step toward the career she had worked so hard to build. But while her loved ones waited for a call that never came, the investigation unearthed a chilling inconsistency. The interview she was lured to didn't just fail to materialize. The very foundation of her disappearance was built on a series of elaborate, ghost-written deceptions. The story quickly fell apart. Everything the perpetrator claimed began to dissolve under the weight of the physical evidence, which revealed a disturbing pattern of a calculated hunt. The deeper investigators looked, the more it became clear. This was not a random tragedy, but a planned sequence of events designed to ensnare a promising young life. Megan was 24 years old, living in Tullahoma, a small town about an hour south of Nashville. It's the kind of place where people know their neighbors, where nothing much happens. Megan had moved around some as a kid before her family settled in Tullahoma, and by her 20s, she'd built a life that was, frankly, admirable. She was working 2 jobs, waiting tables at a local steakhouse and working shifts at a nursing home, while finishing nursing school at the same time. Anyone who's tried to balance even one job with a full course load knows how much that takes out of you. Megan was doing too. Her friends describe her as funny, outgoing, and relentless in the best way. Someone who was always pushing herself, always working towards something. She was 2 months from graduation, 2 months from becoming a nurse, which is what she'd been working toward this whole time. She was living with her partner of 3 years, a man named Chris, and on the surface, at least, Megan had everything lined up in front of her. On the evening of July 1st, 2012, Megan had plans. Her sister was in town visiting from out of state, and Megan was supposed to head over to her mother's house for dinner to see her. But those plans changed. Megan called her mother, Kelly, and explained that something had come up, a job interview, and a good one. She'd have a chance to start working as an in-home caregiver for an elderly woman, and from what she understood, she'd even get an upfront payment if she got the position. For someone working 2 jobs to get through nursing school, that kind of opportunity mattered. Kelly wasn't upset. She was happy for her daughter. They rescheduled dinner, wished her luck, and figured they'd catch up once the interview was done. That was the last time anyone in her family heard her voice. Hours went by. No call, no text, nothing from the interview, nothing from Megan herself. Her family assumed, at first, that it had simply run long, or that she'd gone back to her apartment afterward. It wasn't until well past midnight, moving into the early hours of July 2nd, that the silence started to feel wrong. And that silence was still hanging over the family when, on a dark road just outside of town, 2 teenagers spotted a fire. What firefighters found that morning wasn't a wildfire, it was Megan. There was no car anywhere nearby, no identification on her, no purse, no keys, no phone. Whoever had left her there had made sure there was nothing to immediately say who she was, or who had done this to her. Investigators determined quickly that she had already been killed before the fire was set. The fire wasn't the cause of death. It was an attempt to destroy evidence. Without identification, and with no matching missing persons report yet on file, police did what they could. They released a description based on what they had. And one detail stood out. a distinctive nursing school t-shirt, and several tattoos, including small stars. Word spread through the community fast, the way it does in a town where everyone knows everyone. And somewhere in that spread of information, a Facebook post reached Kelly Sharpton, a post describing a young woman found with star tattoos. Kelly knew instantly. She didn't need to see a photograph. She knew her daughter's tattoos, and she knew, before anyone from law enforcement had even reached her, that the young woman on that road was Megan.
Workers couldn't believe the news waitress Erica Sharpton, or Megan as they called her, was murdered.
We were all just shocked because she never seemed like she was in any kind of trouble.
Friends say Sharpton was a busy 24-year-old who was balancing this job with nursing school and another job at a nursing home.
To try and get out of the restaurant business and get into a better career field, where she can accelerate.
The young lady's body was over here.
Sheriff Tim Fuller says deputies discovered Sharpton's body in this grass on fire early Monday morning. After putting out the flames, they discovered evidence of trauma to her head.
It appears to us that she may have very well been murdered at another location and was literally dumped here to dispose of the body.
The community's reaction was immediate, and it was raw. People who'd waited tables alongside Megan, who'd known her at the nursing home, said the same thing over and over. She was the last person you'd expect this to happen to. She wasn't someone caught up in anything. She was just a young woman trying to build a future.
Joining us now is Kelly Sharpton. I'm sure this has just been so difficult for you and your family. Our prayers go out to you. How did you find out what happened to your beautiful daughter?
I actually read a post on Facebook where they had described a girl with a star tattoo on the back of her neck and one on her foot, and I knew that it was her.
When was the last time you talked to your daughter, and what kind of mood was she in? I understand she was saying that she was going to go over and visit a family, correct?
Right. My other daughter was here from out of town, and she had just woken up at 3:45 that afternoon. She'd worked the late shift at the restaurant where she worked and was planning to come over after that. She said after she got her shower she would come on, and she didn't come. But we were under the understanding she had an interview with somebody to start sitting with an elderly lady. And so we just figured she had gone on and gone to that interview, but we lost track of her after that.
If somebody is out there listening tonight and they saw something, what would you like to say to them as you are desperately searching for clues for your daughter?
Just please, if you saw anything, even the smallest detail, please call the police, call TBI or Franklin County Sheriff's Department. They've been wonderful. They've kept us up to date. They've left no stone unturned. They've just been great, and please call. She was our daughter and our sister. We just miss her.
An autopsy would later confirm what investigators already suspected from the scene. Megan had been raped, beaten, and shot before her body was set on fire. The violence inflicted on her was severe enough that it was, in the words of the officers who worked the case, some of the worst they'd encountered in a county where crimes like this simply didn't happen.
A mother pleads with law enforcement to catch her daughter's killer before she says someone else gets hurt. Good evening, I'm Kim Chapman.
And I'm Calvin Sneed. The murder of Megan Sharpton happened in Franklin County back in July. The murder left her family devastated and on edge, knowing her killer is still out there somewhere.
I wake up in the morning with the horrible realization that my daughter is dead and she's never coming back.
Megan Sharpton was brutally murdered on July 2nd after she was lured to a home. She was raped several times and beaten. Her body was found burning on the side of the road in Franklin County. District Attorney Michael Taylor is overseeing the case.
The investigation is continuing, and hopefully we will have a successful outcome in the near future.
While a murderer walks free, her family is left with a gaping hole. Kelly talks about her son's connection with Megan.
Really valued her and went to her for most of his advice and needs, and he's been devastated.
Sadness and grief have overcome the mother of four who promised to support her children through college. Megan would be graduating from nursing school on October 26th.
I have to accept her diploma for her, and that will be joyous, but it will break my heart because it should be her.
The Sharptons are pleading for District Attorney Taylor to speed up the process and make an arrest in the case so no other woman get hurt. If you have any information on this case, call the...
In cases like this, investigators almost always start close to home. And that meant Chris, Megan's partner of 3 years, was one of the first people they spoke with. Chris told police that he'd tried calling Megan that night and gotten no answer. When she didn't come home, he assumed she'd simply stayed at her mother's, as she sometimes did. It wasn't unusual enough at the time to alarm him, but a search of the apartment complicated things. Investigators found blood in the bathroom, along with drug paraphernalia, enough to bring both Chris and his roommate in for further questioning. As it turned out, the paraphernalia belonged to the roommate, a private struggle he said neither Chris nor Megan had known about. And in the course of those interviews, something else came out. The roommate admitted that he and Megan had been involved in a secret relationship. For a moment, that reshaped the entire theory of the case. Had Chris found out? Had jealousy turned violent? But the evidence didn't support it. Chris had a solid alibi from his workplace, and more than that, investigators who interviewed him described him as visibly shaken, genuinely deeply upset by what had happened. The roommate, meanwhile, had been texting Megan through the night, worried about where she was. His concern read as real, not staged. One by one, investigators ruled them both out, which meant they were back to square one, except for one piece of information Chris was able to give them. On the day she disappeared, a man had called Megan's phone about the caregiving job, and according to Chris, that man said someone named Naomi had recommended her for the position. It was the first real name anyone had heard connected to that mysterious interview, and it was about to send the investigation somewhere unexpected. Chris only knew of one Naomi, a woman who'd studied alongside Megan in nursing school the year before. Investigators tracked down her address and went looking for her. At the same time, something else was weighing on the case. Just 6 months earlier, and about 130 miles away, a young nursing student named Holly Bobo had vanished under her own set of disturbing circumstances. The similarities were hard to ignore. 2 young women, both in nursing programs, both gone under strange circumstances within months of each other. It didn't take long for that comparison to spread through local news, and with it, a fear that something far larger might be happening. A serial pattern. A predator targeting nursing students specifically. It would turn out to be a coincidence. The 2 cases were never connected. But at the time, that uncertainty added real weight to an already frightened community. Meanwhile, the Naomi lead collapsed almost as soon as investigators reached her. She told police plainly that she hadn't recommended Megan for any job. In fact, she barely knew her. The extent of their relationship had been carpooling to a few classes together the year before. She had no idea why her name would have come up. It was a dead end. And for investigators who'd been counting on that lead, it was a frustrating one. The case's next real break came from something almost mundane: a phone. Megan's own phone was never found, but Chris still had the phone that had received the original call about the job. That meant investigators finally had a number to trace. It came back to an unregistered, prepaid phone, the kind bought specifically to avoid being tracked. 12 weeks after Megan's body was found, that number led them to a store in Tullahoma, where the phone had been purchased in person. Store surveillance gave them a face. In the footage, a man is seen setting his own phone on the counter. Deliberately, it seemed, so he could purchase a second one that would be harder to trace back to him. Cameras followed him out to the parking lot, where he got into a red pickup truck. That man was identified as Timothy Gifford, a small-time local figure known to police, but with no obvious connection to a crime this serious. When investigators tracked down the truck, though, they found it wasn't even his anymore. His brother was driving it and said Timothy had recently given it to him, a truck Timothy said he'd gotten from a friend. That friend's name was Donnie Jones. Donnie Jones wasn't a stranger to police. He had a criminal record and had at times worked as an informant for local law enforcement, someone who traded information for leniency. According to Timothy, Donnie had recently had surgery and asked him to buy the prepaid phone on his behalf, since he couldn't do it himself. In exchange, Donnie gave him some of his own painkillers. And not long after, Donnie had asked Timothy for a different kind of favor, help trading in his truck for a Mustang. Timothy admitted he thought that request was strange. Donnie had young children. A practical truck made more sense than a sports car. Still, he helped and passed the truck along to his brother. One more detail stuck with him. The truck's interior, including the carpet, had recently been replaced. Donnie had explained it as his wife's idea, something to make the truck sell faster. It was that detail, Donnie's wife, that made everything click into place. Donnie Jones was married to Naomi Jones, the same Naomi whose name had been used to lure Megan into believing the job offer was legitimate, the same Naomi investigators had already spoken to weeks earlier and ruled out. Now they had a real connection, and they went back, this time to search the Jones home. Donnie denied knowing Megan at all at first. Then he changed his story, saying he vaguely remembered giving her and his wife a ride to class once or twice. He said he'd been home with his kids the night Megan disappeared, denied any involvement with the phone, and told investigators they were welcome to search the house and take a DNA sample. He said plainly that he had nothing to hide. They searched. They found nothing of obvious value. They left with only a DNA swab and a case that, for the moment, was still unproven. While the DNA results were pending, life went on in the way it does, even in the middle of tragedy. The nursing program Megan had been so close to finishing held its graduation ceremony. Her 18 classmates walked the stage without her. An empty seat sat where she should have been. Her mother, Kelly, walked up in her place and accepted Megan's diploma on her behalf.
I'm not the only one that should be sad. Every patient that she would have had, every person that she would have touched should also be lost like I am.
Not long after, the DNA results came back. Through the national database used to match crime scene evidence to convicted offenders, investigators confirmed what they'd suspected. Donnie's DNA matched the evidence from Megan's autopsy. Brought in again, Donnie still denied any wrongdoing, at first insisting he and Megan had never even dated. Faced directly with the DNA match, his story shifted one more time. Now he claimed the two of them had been involved in a secret, consensual relationship. One he said he'd kept quiet for obvious reasons. Investigators didn't believe him, but without more they couldn't disprove it either. And they had no legal grounds to hold him. It looked, for a moment, like he might walk away entirely. Except Donnie had a documented history that worked against him. Prior felony convictions, including aggravated burglary and aggravated assault, which meant he was legally barred from owning a firearm. When police learned that he did, in fact, own guns, it gave them what they needed: a warrant and an arrest on weapons charges. It wasn't the murder charge yet, but it bought investigators time, and it was time well used. Ballistics confirmed that the bullet recovered from Megan's autopsy matched a rifle belonging to Donnie. GPS records showed the burner phone used to contact Megan moving in lockstep with Donnie's own phone that night, placing both devices at 3 key locations: where Megan is believed to have been taken, where she is believed to have been killed, on a piece of property belonging to Donnie's family, and finally, the road where her body was found. Investigators also recovered a partially burned scarf belonging to Megan at that same property.
Monday, November the 5th at approximately 6:30 p.m., the Franklin County Grand Jury returned an indictment against the Tullahoma man for the murder of Megan Sharpton.
He has been charged with first-degree murder of Megan and will face justice in our court system.
This is rural Middle Tennessee. We don't see things like that here. We don't experience that level of brutality or violence or just coldness.
The case that had started with a fire on a back road now had a name, a face, and evidence connecting all three. In November 2012, a Franklin County grand jury indicted Donnie Jones on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated rape, and aggravated kidnapping.
Announced Tuesday that 37-year-old Donnie Jones was charged with killing Megan Sharpton.
On Tuesday, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office charged 37-year-old Donnie Jones with Megan's rape and murder.
A lot of the things that they had shared with me make me know that this is the right person. Then when I started hearing how it all fell together, I had no doubt.
Hearing the charges against Jones and seeing him locked behind bars gives Sharpton a sense of satisfaction for her daughter and the community.
But she's filled my life with so much joy for 24 years. I'll just take that with me and try to learn from this experience.
Donnie Jones has 21 previous felony convictions ranging from forgery to aggravated assault. He had been in jail on an unrelated charge, and he now faces 2 counts each of kidnapping, rape, and murder. He's due back in court on November the 16th.
He was already in custody on the weapons charge when the indictment came down. Investigators later pieced together his method. Using his wife's phone, he'd gotten Megan's number and used his wife's name. Someone Megan at least recognized, to make the job offer sound legitimate. It wasn't the only call he made that night. Records showed he'd contacted several people who worked in caregiving or nursing, seemingly searching for whoever would respond. Megan answered. The fire, prosecutors believed, had been meant to destroy the physical evidence of the assault. Instead, it preserved it, a detail the district attorney would later point to directly, noting that the very act meant to erase the crime helped convict the man who committed it. Donnie Jones initially pleaded not guilty. Facing charges that were eligible for the death penalty, he later agreed to a deal. A guilty plea to first-degree murder in exchange for prosecutors taking the death penalty off the table. In February 2013, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Weeks later, he tried to withdraw that plea, claiming his attorney had pressured him into it and that his family had been threatened. A judge briefly granted a new hearing, but the original sentence was ultimately reinstated.
He walked into a Manchester courtroom with shackles on his hands and feet, coming face to face with Megan Sharpton's mother, Kelly, who was clutching a picture of her daughter.
Well, our theory was that the purpose of the fire was to destroy the semen present in her body.
District Attorney Mike Taylor says the fire actually ended up preserving the evidence that became key after investigators linked Jones to the crime through cell phone records and Sharpton's clothing found on his family's property.
I know that he had a 98 escape where he actually tried to kidnap 2 young ladies in the car and make them take him to the interstate.
In court, Jones asked the judge for a speedy trial, and he mouthed to relatives what appeared to be, "I didn't do it."
He knows in his heart, the universe knows who's guilty. I don't have to argue.
Donnie Jones remains in prison, serving life without parole. Megan's sister would later say something that stayed with a lot of people who followed this case. That if Megan hadn't died that night, Donnie Jones might still be out there, using the same method on someone else. In her family's eyes, Megan's death and the investigation it triggered took a predator off the street before he could do this again.
A plea deal that
but
will keep him in
justice,
prison
even
for the
when
rest
it
of his life,
comes,
with no
doesn't
In February
undo the damage.
2013,
Kelly
37-year-old
Sharpton
Donnie
spent the
Jones
following year
Jr.
as an
pleaded
advocate
guilty
for her daughter
to the first-degree murder
and for
of
other
Megan
grieving
Sharpton.
families she
He was
connected with
sentenced
along
to
the
life
way.
in prison without
She
the
spoke often about how the pain never really eased,
I feel very confident
how she
that Donnie
woke up
Jones
every
would
morning
still
to
be
the
out,
same reality
trying to trick
all over
young women.
again.
Megan put
In
him
November
behind bars for life.
2013,
She
just
sacrificed
over a
her
year
life
after her
to
daughter's
keep
murder,
everybody else in our
Kelly
community
took her own
safe.
life. It's hard to talk about this case without acknowledging that loss as part of it. Megan wasn't the only person this crime took. Today, at the site where she was found, there's a memorial, 7 feet tall, made up of 24 stars, one for each year of her life, a quiet echo of the tattoos she wore for the people she loved. Before we close this one out, it's worth sitting with a few things this case makes clear. Not as a lecture, but because Megan's story is the kind that's worth learning from. First, a familiar name doesn't always mean a safe situation. Donnie Jones used his wife's name specifically because it was a name Megan recognized. It's a reminder that trust built on a loose connection isn't the same as real verification, and a quick callback or confirmation, even to someone half familiar, costs nothing. Second, sharing details matters more than sharing intentions. Megan told her family that she had an interview. She didn't tell anyone where or with whom. A shared location, a name, a time to check in. These are small habits, and they don't cost trust or independence, but they create a safety net if something goes wrong. Third, solving a case is not the same as healing from one. Kelly Sharpton got the justice she fought for, and it still wasn't enough to carry her through her grief. Investigations end. Grief doesn't have a closing date. Families of victims need ongoing support long after the courtroom doors close, not just in the weeks right after a tragedy. And finally, communities are safer when patterns of manipulation and intimidation are taken seriously early, before they escalate. Donnie Jones had a long history before this crime and even inserted himself into the investigation, trying to intimidate a witness weeks before his arrest. Behavior like that is rarely the first warning sign in someone's life. It's usually one of many. Megan Sharpton was 2 months away from the career she'd worked so hard for. She didn't get the chance to finish that journey. But in the process of finding out what happened to her, investigators stopped a man from doing it again. And that, at least, is something her family holds on to. This has been the story of Megan Sharpton. If this case affected you the way it affected us, consider sharing it. Not for the shock of it, but so her name and what happened to her isn't forgotten.